Back at the front here, we're prepping for that end piece that we gotta put on. This is gonna be where the fender is bolted on the bottom to the runner, I guess we could call this, runner, rocker. It'll bolt to that. So the first thing we did was we cut off that metal, that corner metal that we had in here. So we cut that off, that's laying down there. And then I made this piece here, which is gonna go in. And in fact, it's gonna go in on an angle, if you can see that. So it goes in on an angle, and that's gonna help us get them bolts from the bottom there. We have just enough room where we can get our extension and socket in there, and then we'll remove that from the bottom. Once we tack this into place, then we're also gonna finish stitch welding that down there. We didn't want to get too crazy with the stitch welding on the bottom. We didn't want it to distort before we got this piece put on here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack this piece in, and then this part here that has the captive nuts, that one will get tacked to the fender. So the fender will be held in place at the bottom here. And then there is that fastener there, and then basically all along the top. We've welded in our plate here, and this is what the fender is going to bolt to. These two holes here can bolt to that fender, and so we've welded that into place, and everything is pretty much done in here. We've got all our welding done. Here we got a peek at putting that fender on and kind of get an idea what it's going to look like when it's all finished here. Got the lights back in, all that stuff hooked onto the front bumper. Everything's bolted up. I put our square tubing in the bottom here just to get an idea. I still have to buy a chunk of that. It's not cheap. We need about 7 feet all said and done, front to back. This is kind of what it's going to look like when it's finished once we've fixed our ends here. We have to follow the contour of the fender well here, and then we'll match that to all of this stuff down here when we get that piece. Here's that spot in there. This is basically where we welded that piece in, and then we've got the fender bolted on in there. And there we've got our captive nuts in here, so it'll bolt from the bottom. And we have it on an angle on the bottom so we can get at it easier. Your extension and socket, so it's at an angle, so it's not up against the side of the metalwork here. It comes in on an angle so you can get at that, and it also follows the contour of this stuff in here. We seam welded everything in here. That's gonna try and help not get any more water, mud, salt, whatever past this point and beyond underneath to cause any problems that way. We want a consistent gap all the way through, so where it's kind of lifted up on the end, mostly in here, this is kind of where it started to lift up as we were welding that. So just kind of hammer that down and get our consistent gap. Getting ready to put on our square tubing here for that rock slider or rocker panel portion of the Jeep. And so just got it all mocked up there. I use these jacks because they're threaded. Gets to the fine tuning of lifting it up and putting it into place. I just use those ones to kind of start it out into position and everything like that. So I've got it pushed up to the top there. Got a little bit of clearance all the way through, and then we've got some C-clamps there holding it on and everything. And then what we're going to do is we're going to either mark or tack the supports that go in behind. We've got our inserts tacked on there, so what we did was we mocked it all up and we put the inserts on, and then what I did was I tacked it down here where the edges were exposed, and then once I tacked that, then I pulled it out and I threw these extra tacks on here all the way around, just some tacks, and the same on the back side there, so that we can slide it in and out and make sure that it's going to come in and out of there really good. So after welding those stubs on, we just reinstall this, and then we were gonna tighten it up with the clamp, but not tight, just snug enough to hold it where it would be when it's installed, so it doesn't shift or move while we're making our marks. And the first thing I did was I just took the drill here and I drilled my holes in the side here, so it goes both through the sleeve and into our stubs that we welded on there. So once we've got that located, now we can pull it out, we can drill out those holes. This is just a pilot hole with 1/8 bit. So then after that, what I did was I marked what our angle is going to be here, and what I did was I just took a piece of cardboard and I just put it up to another Jeep, and I just used this line right here as my starting point, and then I just kind of put that on there, and then I transferred that angle onto the cardboard, and then again from the cardboard for here. So I've got one for the front and I've got one for the back. Now we can take this side runner off, drill our holes, weld our captive nuts, and also make our cuts on the end. We got our pegs welded on there. We also got our captive nuts welded in there. So when we put that in there, we would drill our holes to line everything up. We purposely cut this on a 45 so we could get in there with the welder to weld the nuts to the inside here. So then all you have to do, obviously you'd never get a wrench in there. We'll be putting the bolts in from the outside. We've also trimmed our ends here, got it all bolted in, and what we wanted to do is we want to make sure we had some clearance all along the top, in between our rocker slider piece here and that lip. Also in here, it's up to whoever's working on it. Like we've got a little bit of material hanging over the edge. It's not exactly flush, but we did that on purpose. So better to have to do a recut than to cut it too short. So if you're going to cap the end, you might want to cut this piece back a little further and account for the material that's going to cover the end of the rocker slider. And that's where you can see there, it's close, but by the time you put a cap on there, it would sticking out a little bit more. There's our 3 bolts there that you can access pretty easy from the wheel well on the front. And again, you can access the ones in the back as well. Just 3 bolts, I just went 3/8. Those will slide into the little receivers, and then you bolt that up, and away you go. And then also too, if you're wondering about this gap in here, that would be partially because of the weld when we welded our stub onto there. So then that weld interferes with this pushing in tight, right in tight with that angle iron. Here's the finished installation here with the Jeep on the ground, the tires back on. I'm debating on whether or not I want to leave this lip on here, or if I just cut it to the body as it follows back here, because back here it's followed with the body line, and I might just do the same thing, cut that off, and then it would just follow the body line. Haven't decided yet, but that's really the only thing other than doing the end caps on there left for this side, and then it'd just be a repeat process of the other side. I guess the last thing is that with this on here, if you were to go rock crawling or whatever, it would save the bottom side of the body, or my thought was side impact if it was low enough from a car or something like that. If you're hit from the side, it would probably save you from getting hurt real bad.